Yo, 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 what's good, YouTube? What's good? It's Stormy B Man, and I am back with another Kung Fu Film Focus. Yes, right. That's right. It's Kung Fu Film Focus. And guess what? I am moving into the Shaw Brothers Library. Yes, I am. And this first feature will kick off one of the classics, from 1972, The King Boxer, a.k.a. Five Fingers of Death. This is a film that is a classic amongst the genre, and it is one of the very first films that was imported in the U.S. back in 1972. When Mao Tse-tung and Richard Nixon opened up trade, and it was one of the original imports at the time from Asia, from their film library. The film had done quite well in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia and became an instant classic amongst hand and foot fighting, fist fighting in screen cinema at the time. So as they packaged it along with a couple of other titles that some of you who follow the genre may remember, The Killer, a.k.a. Sacred Knives of Vengeance, and The Water Margin, a.k.a. Seven Blows of the Dragon. It was some of Shaw's finest, and they imported those films, and they earned instant acclaim amongst audiences here in the U.S. who had never seen that type of action before. Okay? And Run Run Shaw, who ran a cinematic empire from the late 50s all the way up into the early 2000s. Okay? He had a mainstay hold on the film industry in Hong Kong, and they produced the finest films due to he owning his own acreage where he built his own studios and had live-in dormitories for his actors and actresses, his performing artists, as well as production staff. There was something in what he was doing at that time in Hong Kong that emulated what the grand studios in Hollywood did in their heyday. And students would pay fees to try to join the Shaw Brothers staff for a potential shot at stardom. Out of hundreds of delegates, they would only select 5 to 10 per year, per season. And it was interesting to see these young people try their hand at becoming a movie star, a dancer, entertainer, or whatever. And Shaw Brothers was adept at putting anything out there that the viewing public wanted. So he produced operas, he produced dance musicals, he produced action thrillers, he produced monster films, mystery films, spy films, you name it. Mr. Run Run Shaw was ahead of the game at the time. This particular film, which featured a Shaw studio heartthrob Lo Lei in a role which was really uncommon for him because Lo Lei was not a martial artist by any means, but he was a man who could do what the job required. Sort of a Hong Kong version of any star that you could remember here in America at the time that may not have been as talented as doing his own stunts or anything, but they would have a stand-in for him. Lo Lei actually was a very capable actor, and he was very popular. It's one of those things where he was in the right place at the right time. And in this film, Run Run Shaw decided to hire who's now a famed director, Chang Che-ho, which is pictured to the left of him here, to direct this film. And Chang Che-ho was a Korean director, and he came into the Shaw Studios in the mid-'60s, late 60s, and they were looking for a different type of action for this film. So he also enlisted Lau Kar-young, pictured bottom left, and Chan Chuan, who is pictured bottom right, and they became the action choreographers for this classic. Another interesting thing about this film was that it was shot with multifaceted camera angles, and the action was propelled with the addition with body powder. Okay, so when someone got hit against their bodies, you would see dust fly off, or when actors were dropped from a low height to the floor would kick up dust, and it would make for a greater impact. Okay, that type of fare was not there before Chang Che-ho started doing these films with Shaw Brothers. He was innovative in creating these ideas, and the actors and actresses that played in this film, they all pretty much brought their A game. King Boxer was the story of a young martial arts protege who was enlisted by his aging sensei to go to another school that was run by an old acquaintance of his to teach his protege the finer arts of martial arts, and to enter a tournament where the winner would receive proceeds that could help their school run for the next year or season. And he knew that if he sent his protege to his fellow man's school, he would more than likely, if he became a good enough student, that teacher would instruct him in the iron palm technique, which is also the 5 fingers of death. The iron palm, the iron fist. So as this film took place, the number one villains of the film, the Japanese, would soon be called into order. The rival school that competed for the tournament sought to defeat the school that Lo Lei attended, and it was called the Chenwu School. They wanted to defeat the Chenwu School, so they spied on them constantly. They knew that they knew the iron fist, iron palm technique, but that wouldn't be allowed in a tournament situation because it was actually something that could lead to death if an opponent used that particular technique. But they wanted to spy on their school to find out exactly what their ideas were so they could head them off at the pass, and if it required them cheating, they would do so. And of course, they cheated, so they enlisted the help of the evil Japanese who would come to town and work for their school and try to take out the top students of the Chenwu School. In martial art films, at this particular time, the Japanese always would play a heavy role as far as being villainous. The Chinese held an axe to grind with the Japanese culturally and regionally, and every chance that they got cinematically, they would always try to do away with the Japanese on film. So that was no secret that they would do these things and have these type of narratives take place in their films. As we move forward into the film, Chao Shi-hao, who was the student played by Lo Li, his kung fu skill was not quite good enough to earn to study after he had been sent to the Chenwu School by his former master. So he had to work in the kitchen and clean up around the place and everything until his skill set developed where he could join the classes on a regular basis. Now, the interesting thing was that there were other senior students who would bully him around and not quite respect him because he was sent from another school. They kind of took that as an insult. So they didn't really respect Chow Si Hao, and he really had to earn his keep around the school. As we see him training on his own, and studying his manuals, his martial manuals, and everything, the evil Japanese, as I earlier mentioned, had been enlisted to help the former school that was challenging them in the tournament. They would beat up the students when they would see them in the streets. They would, or at a diner or something like that, where we call them the tea houses. They would beat the students up and send messages to them that they weren't to, win this tournament and everything. And in the meantime, Chow Si Hao, who was like slowly coming along with his studies, he was observing these things, and he was wondering why the students at the school weren't as physically capable as far as fighting these Japanese. The Japanese always were made up with long, wild hair or really dark eyes and these weird goatee mustaches and stuff like that. It was like they were trying to make them out like vampire villains or whatever. They were always overhyping and over sensationalizing the makeup on the Japanese baddies. It was always kind of fun to see that, because you could tell that it was their little bit of cinematic racism that they were applying to this. Now, this film was actually the first film I ever saw that was a martial art film. My dad took me to this. I think I was about six and a half at the time when I saw it in the theater. And what always jumped out at me were the amazing cinematic leaps, that these guys would do as they were fighting and stuff like that on film. It was real interesting to see the way it was shot, because trampolines were often used, but we didn't know it at the time, what they used to make these men appear to leap so high, death-defying leaps and everything, seeming like they would go 20 feet in the air. But it was all camera angles, trampolines, and sometimes jumping off of something at a height, something simple as a ladder, neatly obstructed out of camera view. And these guys could leap over each other and everything. And it was supposed to be their martial prowess, coming to show what they were capable of. And it was quite entertaining, because U.S. films had nothing like this at the time. So these type of films became an early version of what we now know as like superhero films. These films were that for us growing up at that time. Kung fu films that really just had actors and actresses performing amazing leaps and, throwing weapons with precision and all of that. So the action was always overemphasized and quite entertaining. I mean, you couldn't help. When you go to watch a Kung Fu film and you see one man taking on 15 or 20 and he's using all these hand and feet techniques and stuff, because remember, back in those days in America, fighting with the feet and everything, that was foreign to us. That was like, this dude's kicking like that. We remember the old John Wayne barroom brawl, slug'ems, slug fists. That's what we knew, fighting with our fist, even from boxing or something like that. But it's like to see these guys doing these techniques with their hands and their feet and their elbows and all this stuff. It was very entertaining. And I can't emphasize it enough, because in the Western world, we were not exposed to that type of athleticism. It was like seeing something new for the first time. And these films really took off. They gave us a sense of wow, just as a slasher film when it was first introduced. It'd make you so scared of the dark, and you hear these little noises, punch, you know, and people, oh, watch out, you know, it's like crazy. But back then, audiences were so much more simple and could be entertained by the least little bit of something. And the flair for the dramatic or something of spectacle was always received earnestly because it hadn't been desensitized so much by being drowned out by other things. But these type of films were highly entertaining. They were never going to win anything like an Academy Award or anything, but they were given to entertaining audiences just on sheer wow factor. Okay, there's a scene in the film where one of the guys is fighting the Japanese villain and his eyeballs are poked out, and then they're shown being dropped to the floor. Back then in 1972, that was something to make people scream and maybe run out of the theater. It's like, you know, it was gross, it was gore, and for those of us who watch kung fu films, we loved it. It was like, yo, you see that? He ripped old Blue's eyeballs out, man. It was like, you know, we loved it, you know. And when Lo Lee finally learned the 5 fingers of death technique, and he would like put his hands up and his palms in front of the screen like this, and you would see them turn red, and they were playing that old Ironside TV show music, the theme song from Ironside. For those of you who are old enough to remember Ironside with Raymond Burr, when you heard those sound strands from his TV show and the dude's hands turning red, you know he was getting ready to use the Iron Fist technique, man. All of that was awesome, you know. And of course it was like sampled music from an American TV show, and there was like some kind of licensing rights with that and all of that, an issue. But we didn't care about that. We just cared about we were being entertained by these martial masters on screen. Okay. And like I said, Lole sold it, man. He was the kind of guy, I mean, you can look at him on the poster here. He's not the most handsome dude in the world, but his acting was pretty good. He could get across the emotional factor, whether it was emoting sorrow or rage or brooding or whatever. He was a good actor, according to Hong Kong standards at that time, for this role. And remember, we hadn't heard of Bruce Lee films yet. Even though Bruce Lee films were made over there, they hadn't been released in the U.S. yet. And we only knew Bruce Lee from his appearance on Longstreet TV show and The Green Hornet and Marlowe, which was a James Gardner spy flick back in the late 60s. So Lee hadn't invaded America yet. And so these films came first. They were the predecessors. And King Boxer led the way. King Boxer broke the box office record. I don't have the numbers on that right now. But for a film released over there, made on a shoestring budget according to Hong Kong standards, you know, it did very well in the U.S. I'm talking at least around 2-3 million at the time. And that's a lot of money back in 1972. And Run Run Shaw had really kicked the doors open for those type of films. And soon after, a floodgate of other films, even from independent film companies, would come to the U.S. I would say from 1972 to about 1978, that window of the martial art boom was really crazy in America. They had so many martial art films that flooded the U.S. market that people just ate these films up. And one of the other actors from that time, Angela Mao Ying, who now lives in the U.S. and is retired from films and everything, but she runs a Mandarin restaurant somewhere in Jersey. So some of you all may have even run across her if you're out there. But her films, I did a review on her film Deep Thrust. That film, Lady Kung Fu, it did $5 million in the U.S. and she never saw any of that money, by the way. So these films, along, like I said, with The Killer, aka Sacred Knives of Vengeance, and Seven Blows of the Dragon, were films that were brought here, and they did very well. Lole was so popular from these two films. This film, Lole was so popular that he I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Lole was so popular that he ended up starring in a film with Lee Van Cleef, like around 1974, 1975. It was called The Stranger and the Gunfighter. Okay, and it was actually a film that was written by Carlo Ponti, who's a film director from the and producer from the spaghetti westerns of the days of Clint Eastwood, and he was married to actress Sophia Loren. They wanted Bruce Lee to star in that role, but he actually had passed away by the time the film was able to go into production and everything. So they brought Lo Lee back from Five Fingers of Death to star opposite Lee Van Cleef, and that was like a spaghetti western / kung fu flick. And any of you out there that are historians of film, and you know that film, it's a rare classic from the genre, but it wasn't that it was such a great film, but it's a classic from the genre because it was the first time that the spaghetti western directors and producers crossed over with Hong Kong producers from the Shaw Studios. So and recently that film has made a comeback on Blu-ray remastered. So if you're out there watching and you're interested in these films, you know that, you know, hey, it's out there on Blu-ray now. You can check it out, and it's ready to be shown. You know, it's ready to be enjoyed. So, but these films were action packed. I mean, some of the choreography, like I said, by Lau Kar-yang and Chen Chuan, those guys put these films together, and as they played to audiences, they show blood, they show guts, they show, like I said, eyes being gouged out. And back in the US at the time, to see that on film was new. It was like, holy crap, I can't believe they did that. You know, did you see that dude do that? And he jumped over his head and he did this. It was like, man, we audiences just totally ate this stuff up. And, you know, it's like a benchmark for Kung Fu because, you know, and what we had prior to that was Japanese samurai films. And you had the old Zatoichi, or the which also later the brother of the actor who plays Zatoichi played Ogami Ito with the Shogun Assassin and the little boy in the baby cart, and he, you know, roamed the lands, and Lone Wolf. You know, those films were around this era too. So that was the other action fare from Asia. But Kung Fu was a whole different thing, man. When kids would go to see these films, they would leave the theaters and they'd be punching and kicking each other. And sometimes somebody got a broken leg or a broken arm trying to imitate these dudes. I had plenty of brothers in my neighborhood that when we were growing up, somebody broke something, man, trying to do this stuff, man. But it was fun. It was a part of our childhood. Like I said, these were superheroes before we got to the Avengers. You understand? And this kind of stuff, you just, I mean, these amazing death-defying leaps and stuff, and 20 feet in the air and fighting in the air and then coming down and stuff. We was like, you see that? Oh, that was cold. You know, we just be in there yelling and celebrating. And sometimes we'll sit in the theater and watch these films 2 or 3 times. You know what I mean? And it was just, you had to be there for that experience. And any other brothers out here or sisters that are old enough to know what I'm talking about, it's like, man, and don't think that the sisters didn't like these films. The sisters love these films too. You know, we all went to these movies and we sat there. As I did my review on The Last Dragon, I talked about how watching that film emulated so much of what was actually happening with our cinematic experiences, that they captured that and put it in the film, as well as how people responded to that. It was something that is a part of our history and our culture that if you didn't live through that and you can only reflect back on it, or someone could go back and look at it, it's not the same feeling of having gone through it. And it's funny because once you are initiated into something or you experience it for the first time, that threshold of crossing that street or avenue at that moment, it is nothing like the first time. So seeing these films for the first time, we're like, wow, you know. I remarked to 78 Sports TV. He was saying a few days back he was spending time with his grandkids. I was like, don't forget to show them some kung fu films, because like I said, because they're young, it'll be their first time watching those movies and stuff, and they can grow up and they'll have that same feeling like we had when we were kids. But just trying to go back and watch them as an adult or something, oh, that's phony. Oh, they look at that. Oh, you can see the string on the guy that they're pulling him on the wire. Oh, man, come on. You have to be able to see it with that innocence of a child, you know, like the first time experience, and you sitting there and you looking at the screen and you're going, wow, look at that. You know, it's like the wow factor. And that's what these films brought, you know, tremendously. Five Fingers of Death was something else. And to see Lole, like I said, carrying out those techniques on the screen and everything, it just brought something that wasn't there cinematically before, you know. And here, you know, we could see him when he was training for the Iron Fist technique. You know, he's sticking his hands in the coals and everything, and you know, he's trying to make his hands tougher, you know. And as you see here on the other shot, where he's, you know, fighting the villain at the end of the film, he's actually able to punch through the wooden post because his hand is so hardened from sticking it in those hot coals and everything. And then he punches through the post and he still hits the guy. You know, that's excellent stuff. If you're watching a Kung Fu film, that's what you want to see right there. You want to see somebody get hurt. You want to see their body bleed and stuff like that. As Eddie Murphy said in Trading Places, he said, karate men bleed on the inside. That's why when they get hit a blow and it's real hard, they spit up a little blood. They be like, it's like, that was a staple in Kung Fu films as well. To see a dude get hit with shots and then the blood come trickling out the mouth. It don't pour out the mouth. It just, you know, it's like, y'all don't understand. But those who've seen it enough know what I'm talking about. They understand. You know, it's like, man, and I'm going to tell you something. Bruce Lee films, he actually coerced the directors of his films and producers to go for more realism, with the exception of him beating up 25 guys without taking a blow or something. But he didn't want all the over sensationalized blood and the high leaps and stuff in his films. But man, when you wasn't watching his movies, this is what you got to see. And it's like, this is what people wanted to see, right? It's like, jumping up in the air, going through brick walls and shit. You know, it made for amazing stuff. Really amazing stuff. And Five Fingers of Death is also a classic because the two men who did the choreography, Lau Ka-young and Chang Chun, they created fight scenes that forever will be etched in history because they were creative in their techniques. Just right here, showing Lo Lee putting his hands in the hot coals. Do you know just the visual of that, what it gave to audiences at the time? Because those iron cold pellets that he's sticking his hands in under a flaming cauldron, it's like, dude, that has to hurt. You understand? That has to hurt. And this man is doing it over and over and over again, making his hands like steel. Okay? And then he's able to break that piece of wood or whatever because he's practicing. And then later in the film, as you see, he's fighting the villain and he punches through a pillar and still lands the punch on the guy because he was able to punch through the pillar. That was awesome visual. Awesome visual. It was like, you could tell a story. Say if you're reading it off the page, and he punched him through the pillar or whatever. But when you're able to show it that well visually, cinematically, you've done your job. And like I said, audiences loved that, man. They loved it. It was like Five Fingers of Death was head and shoulders above anything else at that time at the box office, action wise. Action wise. People went to see this movie 3, 4, 5 times. You understand? And that's something you can't say today. You see a movie today, you know, oh, it's pretty good. I liked it. What's next? You know what I mean? Back then, you see a movie like this, you're like, shit, man, I'm going to sit here and watch it 2 or 3 more times. You know, that's the way it was back then. You know? And then when they started bringing more of those films in, man, we couldn't do nothing but wait and sit around and just enjoy the fact that they were giving us what we wanted. You know, this was just something totally unbelievable in cinema at the time. You know, we got a few people in the chat that have said some things, and I'm sorry that I haven't caught everybody and greeted everybody, because usually when I do the film reviews, I'm so busy talking about the content and everything. But I want to say salute to everybody that's out there in the chat. You know, this is you know, something that I'm trying to focus on 2 things. You know, you guys in the chat, and you know, my narrative here on the film. By this being the first kung fu film that I saw, it made me immediately go home. And you know, ever since I was a kid, I was an artist. I draw and color and things like that. After coming home watching King Boxer, aka Five Fingers of Death, I come home drawing these guys flying through the air, punching their hands through somebody's body and stuff. And my mom was looking at me like, boy, stop drawing that stuff. And I was loving it because it was embedded in my mind. You know what I mean? I wanted to recreate it. I wanted to do it myself and stuff like that. So I began, you know, at a young age, taking martial arts lessons. And it was something that a lot of people did at that time. Once we learned what kung fu was, that it wasn't some food or something like that, and it was like a art that you could study, or like boxing or something, people were signing up. But the thing about it was, there were many, many karate schools. Nobody wanted to see karate. People wanted to do kung fu. You know what I mean? And a lot of the Asian schools in America at that time, they were privatized. They weren't teaching Americans. And that was one of the things Bruce Lee was vilified for in the 60s, because he wanted to teach Chinese kung fu in San Francisco, where he was, and Seattle, and the Asian community didn't want him to do it, you know. And he had, you know, to fight literally for that, or the right to do so. As we watch these films, you could see where Shaw Brothers was a bit above the independent film circuit. Their production values were much better. They had fighters, I mean not fighters, but they had movie sets and everything that showed off the talents of their production staff. You know, the stuff that they did on their films, you know, the settings, the backdrops, everything looked very nice. It looked like realistic settings. And they were noted through that for the entire duration of the studio's heyday. Other film companies would try to emulate that, but no one ever made set designs and everything as beautiful as what you would see in a Shaw Brothers film production. Whether it was a temple, a tea house, a school, you know, an outdoor tournament setting, as you see here. It was like everything had a wonderful backdrop that meshed well. Costumes were very nice in Shaw Brothers productions. They just seemed to be a great deal more invested in overall production quality, okay? And the actors and actresses sometimes took a back seat to the production quality of their films, and it could be seen no matter which film you're watching produced by Shaw's. So one thing the old man did right was he put the money where it needed to go to get the best. You know what I'm saying? It gets the best out of the productions. But I tell you, there was nothing like watching this film for the first time. I remember in an opening fight sequence, they showed two guys jump up and do flying kicks toward one another. And the way the camera captured the action, it looked like they might have been like 40 feet in the air. You know, and they weren't really, but it's like the way it was captured, it looked like that. And then the guys would land, and then they go back into fighting and stuff like this. And sitting there as like a 6 or 7-year-old, man, you're like, man, this is amazing. This is great. You know what I mean? That I can't emphasize enough the feeling that was to see that type of action for the first time. It was just amazing, utterly amazing, you know. And there were a lot of familiar faces in here. There were women involved in this particular production. Wang Ping and the other sister, what's her name? Wang Qingfeng. They were the two leading ladies in the film. And they had decent roles, even though they were simply the girlfriends of a couple of characters, but they were there. They were impactful. Some kung fu films really made the women non-existent, even if they were there, or they were there to be ravished over or something like that, or in a brothel or something like that. But this film in particular, it had the women in a role where the men cared about them, and that kind of went away as kung fu genre grew more and more. It was more emphasis on the fighters and their fighting and everything, but this film still had a bit of a subtlety that it was able to capture that element. I'll try to, let's see, Wang Ping is this young actress right here. And Wang Qingfeng is this actress right here. Now, what was great about them, like I said, you didn't see films much after this emphasize the ladies, unless the ladies were fighters. But to have them in there, and Wang Ping, she played Lo Lei's girlfriend in Love, you know, what do they call it? His mistress or his actress, you know, his woman or whatever. And the other lady, she fell for him during the film's plot, but he kind of shunned her. But the other guy from his school liked her, but she didn't like that guy. And that guy was the guy that got his eyes poked out or whatever. So when she later saw him incapacitated, she went to a nurse and helped him, and she actually ended up being with him. So it was like these little subplots that were pretty cool. There were sweet stories within a story. Kung Fu films actually got away from that as they got older, you know, and when I say older, meaning like as the genre grew, those type of subtleties went away. But it was the kind of thing that would make a film work overall, because you could see where they took time out to do some things other than just fight. So I don't know if many of you who are in the chat saw this film, but it was the type of film that, my goodness, when you take you go to see it, and little brothers and cousins and nephews and nieces and stuff go with you to see this on Easter Sunday or something. It's like, man, it was cool, man. You be out there at the theater dressed up, you know, in your Easter outfit, and you go and watch these films. It was excellent, man. It was excellent. And I don't I don't uh, regret being a part of that era. It was something to behold. It was a thing where when we watched these films, we saw them and they weren't cut. You know, it's like some things you weren't supposed to see as a young audience. You know, maybe not in this particular film. Only the violence in this film. And like I said, there were some beheadings. There was some eyes being gouged out. There was some knife impalements. You know, there was stabbings. There was punching. You know, and kicking. You know, and stuff like that. But all in one film, I think that's enough, don't you? He just shit. It's like, but it was uncut, man. You know, I don't think they would even show certain things like they showed in this film today. They would might imply it more, but back then, man, let me tell you something. Kung Fu, it was it was something to be seen. I'm just gonna say it like that. You know, Five Fingers of Death was a great movie to send over to the U.S. because it had a little bit of something in there for everybody. I believe that Run Run Shaw understood that, which is why he sent that film in particular as one of the first leads for you know for to show to the Western audiences, and also for the reason I mentioned the underlying story about the ladies, because Seven Blows of the Dragon and The Killer, aka Sacred Knives of Vengeance, those two films were they were more of the heroic guy, you know, the Dirty Dozen type, and then The Killer was like two brothers, you know, trying to set out for revenge or something, and it was just different storytelling, okay. But King Boxer, my goodness, what a film, man. And I, you know, my favorite kung fu film of all time is Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, which is also known as The Chinese Connection, in its American titles. Um, and my that's my all time favorite film. But my all time favorite second film, kung fu genre, is King Boxer. I could watch this film and Fist of Fury over and over, back to back all the time. I could watch the two of the films because I think these are two of the best Hong Kong action films of that era ever, and they both were made and released in 1972. And I love the fact that it offered something that was a mainstay of the genre, which was, you know, a strong heroic character driven to fight and defend, and not just recklessly fighting and defending. Both films reflect that, and Lo Lei was great in this role. It's a shame he and Bruce Lee never got a chance to make a film together because they were, you know, popular actors at the time, and I think they could have really done something great if they were able to do a film together. Two different types of gentlemen too. Lo Lei was not a martial artist at all, even though Bruce Lee was. Bruce Lee was more of a character, you know, in real life. He was a different type of a person. So I don't think we ever got to see the best of his work because he died so young. But he would have made a great villain or some kind of comedic guy or whatever, because he was kind of goofy and aloof like that behind the scenes. A lot of people didn't know that. But these films were some of the best of the era. And I just, again, you can't state it enough. When you see Five Fingers of Death, the King Boxer, you know, these guys leaping around the screen and stuff and doing the things that they were doing, just amazing. You know, amazing efforts at the time. Just totally amazing. I'll take a moment and acknowledge some of you guys' comments. Nassim the Dream says, my older brother and his crew are the ones who got me into this shit. I couldn't get enough. A kung fu fight could break out at any time after church, and it all could go down anywhere we're queen. Yeah. Hey man, let me tell you something. That's how it was. That's what I could relate to. That's what we were doing in our Easter suits and shit, fighting, doing kung fu. Man, your mother kick your butt being out there in your Easter Sunday outfit that she just spent that money and got out of layaway, and you out there fighting, scuffing your shoes up on the concrete and stuff. It's like, well, we was doing that stuff, man, and it was fun. It was fun as hell. You know what I mean? The Black Manta says, definitely appreciate you. Five Fingers of Death review. Thank you, man. And Mr. Mr. Male Advice DIY says he's laughing. Lala D is laughing at Nassim. Nassim also says, I had karate sticks, man-made joints on the hip. This thing really took off. Like I said at Lala D, a fight could break out any time of the day and anywhere. It didn't matter. So be ready all the time. Yup. Hey, Nassim, I used to walk around. I had a pair of homemade nunchucks myself. Kept them hidden under my shirt and stuff. Dude, I used to do that. Lala D says, stay ready is a huge Jet Li fan. Mr. Male Advice DIY is like laughing. And Lala D says, Nassim the Dream, no, my mother, she got me liking them a bit more. I think one of the old ones she loves is 310 to Yuma. Okay, talking about the Western. Nassim the Dream says, I am so hands-on. That's why I like it that tough. Down and get into that type of movies. This is why my sports have to be tough. And contact sports. No golf, tennis. We have to make contact of some kind. I hear you, Nassim. He says, I miss those days. He said, we used to watch a movie, then another movie would come on right after that. Yeah, back here in the Shy, man, they used to have them for like 3 movies for $1.25, and then it was later $1.50, and then later $1.75, man. 3 movies a day. The movie theater will open up at 8:45 a.m. And on a Saturday, we go down there, man. We be there at 8:25. And be ready to line up to go in and watch them movies, and we'll watch all of them all day. And then when the last one go off, the first one that they showed would start again. And sometimes if that was the best one, we'll stay to watch that again too. Now, seeing the Dream says, when I was little, we watched Jaws, then Bad Boys with Sean Penn, then Scarface. After that, the sun was coming up. When we got finished in there, the movies was like a treat back then. Yes, it was, man. It was an escape, a getaway, a nice time to spend your day or whatever. There was nothing like it, man. Nothing like it. Man, that was great stuff, man. That was great stuff. Joseph Brown says, these be some of the best streams, Stormy B, man. Kung Fu reviews, salute to you. Thank you, Joseph Brown. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I just be trying to, keep things, keep it fresh, keep something a little bit different. But since I have such a vast Kung Fu film collection myself, and my recollections of the films, I don't mind talking about them because I have a whole lot of knowledge on them. These films were all a part of me, and what I was doing back then. So, I don't mind talking about these films. I really don't. I really don't mind. So, but yeah, man. These films, hey, what can you say? I'll go back a little further in the chat because I know there was some other people up in here. Here we got Drew Titan was up in here too. He says he's saluting some people. He says, people, please avoid Oxy. He said, this shit ain't no joke. A brother cannot operate a vehicle right now. Oh, what happened there? Drew, I don't know. Caught that conversation a little late. Lala D says she's going to watch the 36 Chambers again. And Drew Titan says the Chinese version of blackface. The Black Banner says, Trick Nolte, this movie, Godfather of Hong Kong, is almost impossible to find unless you have an 8mm projector. Black Banner, if you're still out there, Stormy B Man got The Godfather of Hong Kong, and I got it on DVD and VHS. Gil Coles was out there. He said, salute Stormy B Man and the chat. This is probably a good time to get caught up on some kung fu flicks. You better believe it, man. I got some I'm going to watch after this. I got to go mop my floors first, but I will be watching some kung fu after this, man. This is what it's all about. Huh? And let's see. Drew Titan says, when Bruce did the flying kick off the damn building, I fell on the floor laughing my ass off. Flying kick off of the building? What building? Bruce ain't. Oh, you must be talking about Marlowe. Yeah. Bruce went over the top of that building, man. They let him go out like a sucker on that one. I didn't like that, man. Making Bruce do that stupid stuff like that so the white man can win. Get out of here. Yeah, Five Fingers of Death is a classic, people. If you haven't seen it, haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. It's one of those films that is action-packed from beginning to end. There's a host of characters, a bunch of villains, and guys getting their butts handed to them, and it's all entertaining. It's like, and when you get beyond the over sensationalized action and sound effects, and you realize the film for what it is, it's a great moment in cinematic history, you know, where you just saw some stuff for the first time. And remember, I could actually tell you, for American audiences, this was their exposure to Kung Fu for the first time. Real Kung Fu. And the over sensationalized action and sound effects were all a part of it. You know, when you hear somebody and it goes, whoosh, you know, it's like, what the heck? You hear somebody, it might go like, you know, but it don't go, whoosh, you know, it make that sound like that. But that emphasis is what make you love it, man. It's like, man, I want to hit somebody for real and make that sound. But hey, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, it's Kung Fu, man. And that's the best part of it, when you could, you know, enjoy these films like this. So, I don't know. I like to say, you know, enjoying Kung Fu films for what they are, hey, man, that's what it's all about. But this will probably be it for now, as far as this little review and reflection on King Boxer, you know, Five Fingers of Death, a.k.a. Five Fingers of Death. One of the greatest Kung Fu films ever made, and the #1 film released in the U.S. back in 1972 when they opened up the borders and started trading and everything with China. This was one of Hong Kong's entries into the cinematic library. So there's some history to this film. You know, there were some things to really remember, and this was before Bruce Lee films were openly released to the American audiences. So go and check it out, enjoy it, you know, remember it for what it was. It was an all-time great masterpiece, Five Fingers of Death with Lo Lei. Okay, but that's about all I got for y'all on this one. You know, Stormy B Man will be doing some more of these. There's plenty of films to talk about. I'm talking about hundreds of them. So it's like, you'll get some more of this. You know what I mean? And I ain't going to have them like every day or nothing like that. But we'll be able to talk about these films. This is the first one I've done in a couple of months. So I hope you enjoyed our little talk and discussion on King Boxer, man. It's a great film. And I say just go watch it and enjoy it for what it is. Stormy B Man is out here and just trying to help bring you guys decent entertainment. You know what I'm saying? But that's it for now. I'll say shout out to the LDBC and everybody that's out there listening today and watching this. Catch it on a replay if you're coming in late. Hit the like button, subscribe button. Tell some people to subscribe. Share it. Share this review. Let people see, you know, Stormy B Man is introducing you to these great movies, and it's great to be a part of it. You know what I mean? So enjoy it. You know, there's nothing wrong with enjoying this. This is great stuff. This is great film fare, and we should all just relish in it. You know what I mean? So don't be bashful. You know, just do what you got to do. Share that information. You know what I mean? So that's all. That's all I want to do is help bring you guys, you know, this great content, man. Just bring you great content. You know, these films. Cause hey. Yeah. So, all right, you guys. So, Stormy gonna get on out of here. And like I said, anybody that came in late, you could catch this on the archives. You know, ain't nothing wrong with catching it, reviewing it, running it back. So I'm gonna get on out of here, you guys. Peace out to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will catch you guys next time.